Several years ago, I led a large project. This project involved overseeing about 14 committees with about 300 people serving on them. It had a budget of about $1 million. Once the project was successfully completed, one of the committee chairmen came up to me and said, "You know, at that first meeting, I could not believe I was going to be working for a ditzy, dumb blonde." Now, I know that was meant as a compliment. I didn't turn out to be as ditzy or as dumb or as blonde as I was perceived to be. But what was it about me that gave that person that impression? We'd never met before, and yet this was going to affect this person's perspective of how competent I was to do this big job. Gendered expectations, whether overt or subconscious, are ever present. This issue of likability and competence has been found that women cannot be perceived to be both. Now, over the past 20 years, I have had a woman come into my office practically every working day to talk about pursuing a career. When I have worked with these women, I have heard one consistent concern. Sure, they want to be paid properly. They want to work in a safe and secure environment. But the one pervasive worry that I hear, the one that they are sometimes too embarrassed to even admit, is, what if the actions I take, what if the words I say, what if the way I look causes people not to like me? This issue of likability is a real minefield for women. Why? Because it directly impacts her ability to be paid what she's worth and to be recognized and advance in organizations based on her careers, on her competencies and her abilities. How does this happen? How do women come to fear acquiring a label that will adversely impact their way to career? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. Take the woman who comes into my office as a college student ready to apply for a job or an internship. She'll hand me her resume and ask me to review it. I have one standard question that I always ask before I even take the first look. And that question is, what did you leave off? And usually she'll kind of look at me kind of puzzled, and I'll say, honors, awards, leadership. And 9 times out of 10, she will say, I don't want them to think I'm bragging. First job, I was recently working with a young woman who went into engineering. She's an engineer. And she was saying that in this first job, she is not getting the same complex assignments that the men who were hired at the same time in the same position on this project are getting. She's the only woman on this project. She says they think she's snooty. The reason is, when the men are sitting around shooting the breeze and deciding who's going to do what, she can't jump in. And this is causing her to get the administrative assignments, not the ones that help her rise into higher positions of responsibility on this particular project. Advance into career. I was talking with a woman who was very advanced in her organization, and she had the opportunity to apply for a new job. I asked her how the interview went, and she said, I think they liked me. Now, this is a woman in full possession of her career, and that was the first assessment she made of her credentials. So, how does this happen? Well, it all starts pretty young, and it is a result of pervasive cultural behaviors and insidious reinforcement. At 2.5 years old, boys are already ignoring girls. And when they play together, boys consistently are the rule makers and the active participants, while the girls are bystanders. Boys and girls are already navigating relationships in a very different way. The boys are admiring swagger and power, and the girls are admiring modesty and being liked. Get to those dreaded middle school years, and boys are refusing to listen to girls' ideas, are talking over girls, and are even accusing the girls of screaming when all the girl is trying to do is literally have her voice heard. By the time a girl gets to high school, she has learned that others disapprove when she draws attention to herself and to her accomplishments. So already we see that girls are acquiring labels. Take charge on the playground, Bossy. Point out my accomplishments in class, Bitchy. Have an opinion, Brazen. Now, when we get into career, what we are finding is that as women progress into college, they are being surveyed again. So a study of entering college freshmen asked the entering students to forecast how they were going to do in college by predicting their grades. Some predictions were made publicly and some predictions were made privately. When the entering college women predicted their grades publicly, they predicted lower grades. When they predicted their grades privately, they predicted higher grades. Now, this is not indicative of confidence. This is indicative of their reluctance to admit the confidence they feel for their potential accomplishments, drawing attention to themselves and risking not being liked. In college study groups, women who speak up in one study group intentionally speak less in the next study group to avoid the appearance of domineering the conversation. Business school students, when they are put in highly competitive environments, fewer women step forward. They, of course, are able to compete. They, of course, can do just as well. They simply refuse to do so. Now, competition tells us who does well, but it does not tell us who does best. And if women are fearing getting negative labels, this is just counterproductive for the fabric of our communities. Time to graduate, apply for a job. Numerous studies have shown that when the exact resume is submitted in application, except that one has a man's name at the top and one has a woman's name at the top, the man will be selected for the interview. It doesn't matter if the evaluator is a man or a woman, both men and women will select the man. These evaluators say that the male applicant demonstrates higher competency for the job. The resumes are identical. What is the evaluator seeing on the woman's resume that is not allowing her to progress even to an interview? Now, women have become mindful of their potential to acquire negative labels, and so will adapt behaviors that will help them avoid it. One of the primary ways is in conversational styles. So, for example, women will qualify what they're saying. It's just a thought, but, or they will apologize for having an opinion. I'm sorry to disagree, but, or they will try to build consensus. What do you think if we all try this? Now, what that does, it takes her to the opposite end of the labeling spectrum and makes her overly sensitive, passive, indecisive. this issue of labeling adversely affects women for a couple of reasons. All of us use labels, even when we try not to, even when we are just thinking them. This affects the way we perceive a woman's ability to earn money and to progress in her career. The glass ceiling, the wage gap still exists. Women earn 80% of what men earn. There are some projections that the wage gap will not be closed until 2059. My granddaughters will be in mid-career in 2059. An initiative by the American Association of University Women has found that this is because women don't get promotions and don't get raises. There's still only a few cracks in the glass ceiling. I have found this to be particularly pernicious for women in mid-career. This is when family obligations and the potential to rise into more senior levels of our organizations collide. Family responsibilities continue to be primarily the purview of women. Think about the last time one of your colleagues left work early to go to their child's activities. Chances are, if it was a woman, there was some discussion of work-life balance and juggling it all. And there was kind of this undertone of, is she really 100% committed to her career? Chances are, if it was a man, the perspective was, what a great dad. This is my granddaughter. She's 3. She is not following in her grandmother's footsteps. She is not a ditzy, dumb blonde. What if my granddaughter can grow up in a world where she does not have to be afraid of acquiring negative labels? Where when she is out playing with the boys, she is collegial rather than high maintenance. Where when she puts her trophy up on the shelf and points it out, she is considered capable, not stuck up. Where she can have an opinion and is considered thoughtful rather than shrill. What if all women could stop worrying about acquiring negative labels that have impact on their progression in career and their ability to earn money? This is easily done. One step. We need to intentionally stop applying a negative descriptor to a woman for no other reason that she exists in the world as a female. And when we do that, I firmly believe that we will make major inroads into those 2 major challenges that have been conundrums for us for decades. It will help us close the salary gap, and it will help us propel women up through the glass ceiling, where they are not only able to compete, but willing to excel. Women are navigating real change right now. Let's acknowledge their competency, and let's like them for having it. Thank you.